me. So I am Aaron West. I'm CEO of the Nevada Builders Alliance, and I'm coming to you from my office in the historic Bank Saloon, located in Carson City across from the legislature. So if you guys get a chance, come down and get some deals done at the Bank Saloon. And we even have non-alcoholic beverages as well. So what's going on in construction in Northern Nevada? Well, I think we can, there we go. Obviously, as has been brought up a couple times, COVID, right? Where are we at with COVID? Because that seems to be driving a lot of what's happening in the market right now, and things are looking good. Numbers are way down, and that's all driving, you know, whether our hospital utilization, ICU, ventilators, all that stuff. All those metrics are really looking very positive. Vaccinations, lots of folks rolling out getting vaccinations. And so as a function of that, the governor, you know, came out on Tuesday and said, not only is he turning over local control of the plans for the management, if you will, and the limitations associated with COVID, he's handing that over to the local jurisdictions on May 1, but also kind of stole their thunder and said by June 1, he anticipates that the state will be open 100%. Interestingly enough, he also let everybody know that he's still in control of the mask mandate. So we'll see what the timing is on that. But there's already several jurisdictions that have put plans in place that call for removing the mask mandates as well. As we all know, well, and I think it was, you know, if you go back a year, right? I think there was certainly an initial kind of shock when they announced the lockdown in April. What's that going to do to our industries? What's that going to do to housing, all that? And certainly created some roadblocks, but at the same time, I don't think any of us in Northern Nevada expected what came next, right? Which was as soon as we already had folks coming in from California, as soon as a lot of those businesses in the Bay Area said, you know what, we're going to go to a work from home model, we're good with it, you no longer have to live in the Bay Area, we all saw that flood of individuals coming over the hill, and we continue to experience the flood of folks coming over the hill. And so whether it's business or individuals and they're coming over, they're cash in hand, and you know, every realtor friend that I have that we talk to seems to have the same story about, you know, if you're repping a seller, it's awesome. You can throw that house up in 2 days. You're going to have all the offers you need, well over asking, waiving all the contingencies, hell, appraisal, inspections, forget about it. Let's just get this deal done. And if you're representing a buyer, it's the most frustrating thing that you've ever had to endure. You know, chasing houses and making multiple offers and trying to decide how far do you need that, move that bar up in order to get the deal done. So let's kind of talk about what's happening out there. So through the Nevada Builders Alliance, obviously, and I guess I did, for those of you that don't know who we are the state's largest construction industry organization. I represent about 1,000 contractors statewide, have an office here in Carson and as well as Vegas. And so we're just trying to keep you guys, you know, obviously looking out for the best interest of the construction industry and working collaboratively with all of our industry partners. When things started going south with COVID, we realized that our members needed some data in order to try and help make decisions and look at where we're going for the future. And so we came up fairly quickly. We worked with a company called Applied Analysis. You guys have probably heard about them. They're statewide. They do a lot of financial analysis and so forth. And so within our website at nevadabuilders.org, we came up with these economic kind of indicators and updates. And so the first thing we did was to roll out some national metrics that are updated weekly so that you could literally get a weekly snapshot of what's happening out there. And these are from a national scale. And then on a monthly basis, we do, and we'll get into that, we do a kind of a newsletter And so if you don't receive our newsletter, you can go to nevadabuilders.org. You can sign up for the newsletter. You'll get that. And we do a monthly rundown that we'll get into. But so one of the things that we thought would be interesting to look at is the stress index, because at the end of the day, we're all still tied to lending, and stress within the financial system creates issues on our end because banks get nervous, then they don't want to lend. And as we all remember, early last year when we started seeing a lot of layoffs, and then we started seeing the programs put in place to prevent evictions and foreclosures and things of that nature. So we're keeping people in their houses, but at the same time, we're creating tension in that system. And so that's where what you really see. You can see that the financial stress index really peaked in December, January timeframe. And it was a culmination of all of those measures that were put in place as a function of COVID to keep people in their houses and not have them be evicted or foreclosed on, but it's creating stress within the system. Now that those programs are being phased out, we're starting to see things kind of return a little bit more to normal. Interestingly, on the mortgage application side, obviously it continues to be much higher than it was pre-COVID. But as a lot of you know, mortgage applications don't mean a lot in this market because there's so many cash buyers. So it's really a challenge. And it's creating stress at every level of the buying spectrum. So, but it's good to see that activity. Obviously, there's a lot of lenders out there that are doing what they can to keep the money flowing. So this is the monthly economic update that we talked about. Obviously, we keep a close eye on construction employment. Numbers ticked up in February, but I will tell you that that's at a statewide level. If you go back to 2005, 2006, we had about 140,000 construction workers in Nevada. And so as you can see, we are well short of that number. And that is causing all kinds of problems for us in trying to provide inventory. And so when we talk about what are the biggest issues with respect to the construction industry right now, employment is certainly number one. And as we'll talk more, as it relates to new home construction, access to lots and land is quickly becoming number two. But let's not rule out what's going on at the local government level and regulation and things of that nature, because that's always right there. So as you can see, units permitted on a monthly basis, they're kind of just floating around. That really, again, comes down to a function of, we haven't really seen big increases in our ability to create new product. One, because of labor, and two, also because of materials. I'm sure you guys have all heard the horror stories about what's going on with lumber, steel. Had an interesting conversation yesterday where there was some talk of, well, since lumber's doubled in the last year, the price of lumber's doubled in the last year, what about if we look at going to steel? Well, most of the steel plants located within the U.S. are still subject to the COVID restrictions, and so they're operating at 50%. As a function of that, there's folks that have big buying power who have kind of inserted themselves into the process and made sure that they have what they need. So, for example, Amazon built about 6 million square feet of e-commerce distribution space in Las Vegas alone in the last 2 years. They need steel for those buildings. They have gone out and reserved 30% of the current capacity for all steel production in the U.S. is being held by Amazon for new construction across the U.S. So those are the types of, when you have major players like that have resources and have the ability to, tie up those resources, it's really having a huge impact. So, it's as you look at taxable sales, and then we get on to our employment, all things of that nature, all this is really kind of playing also into what's going on in Carson right now, which is our biannual legislature. So lots of issues certainly to be addressed within the legislature, but I will tell you that certainly the hottest topic that I'm seeing is housing, and it's access to housing, it's affordable housing. What are we doing for our workforce? What are we doing for those in need? But before I drift off of this, kind of going back to that whole financial stress indicator and looking at these numbers and looking at unemployment, obviously Northern Nevada, we're much less impacted, right? Over the last 10 years, we've done a really good job in Northern Nevada diversifying our economy. Our economic development system works. The folks that are, spearheading those efforts are doing an amazing job. And so Northern Nevada is really not reliant on gaming and hospitality like Southern Nevada is. And that's evident just by our unemployment rate. So, right, in Northern Nevada, our unemployment rate is less than 5% right now, which is crazy considering everything else that's going on. But when you look in Southern Nevada, it's over 13%. And so as a statewide, we're looking at about 9, which seems to be pretty consistent nationally. But Northern Nevada's hot, diversified economy. We're not subject to a lot of those layoffs, and we have more companies coming in. And they're trying to hire. And so it's just, it's a perfect storm of a lot of people, a lot of individuals trying to get out of California, a lot of businesses trying to get out of California. And, Northern Nevada is very desirable. So it's driving. The one thing I will point out, and we'll talk a little bit about this, but in terms of new single family units permitted and new multifamily, what you'll see in terms of permits and production between multifamily and single family is that it kind of ebbs and flows. There's a balance there because there's only so much labor, going back to that argument. So if you have a surge in apartments, say, that drags labor away from single family. And so it's not a function of, we all know that we need more single family, but we just don't have the labor to complete it. So like I say, this information is available on our website and also through our newsletter. So if you're not getting that, check it out. I've kind of been using this image for a while in terms of, what's going on in Northern Nevada. And it's, we tend to, if we've been here for any length of time, we tend to talk about Reno and Sparks and then kind of, our individual little communities. And what this really shows is kind of how close we really are in terms of proximity and why we're having the impacts that we are in all of the various jurisdictions. So, the big yellow blob, I love it when Lance Gilman refers to it as the big yellow blob. That's really kind of at the center of Northern Nevada and our outlying communities. And so with all the activity that's still going on at the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, and a lot of, that, the remaining 67,000 acres was sold to blockchain, and everybody thought, well, that's kind of done. Well, it turns out there was still several thousand acres that were in other ownership that are still available for development. And so we're still seeing some pretty significant projects come forward in the industrial center. I will say that as a function of that sale, we now have some other players in the market. And one big one is in Fernley. So the Mark IV came into town and bought what was left of the Wade Industrial Center in Fernley. And they are moving forward with what's called the Victory Logistics Center. And currently they're in permit for about 1 million square feet of multimodal distribution facility. And then they're also, I can't talk about a couple of them, but I can tell you that there's other major players that are now taking down property and looking at pretty significant projects in the Fernley area because of the limitations within the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center. So that growth is going to continue. We're also seeing some of that push into
Aaron.
Yes.
Is this image available on the website?
What I'll do is I'll share the whole slide deck with you guys when we're done.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but I would definitely pull this one out. And it's actually, I need to get an updated version, but it does give you an idea of if you drill into it, the active projects, units approved, things of that nature. But it really shows, what's fueling the demand in Dayton, in Silver Springs, and Fernley, and even to some extent Carson and Douglas. And again, what's crazy about it is that even though we have these major projects going on in certain of these areas, we continue to see significant projects everywhere else. I mean, there's projects going on in Douglas County right now. A advanced manufacturing company that was located in Carson, just expanded to, they're in the process of constructing 40,000 square feet for a new facility down in Douglas County. There's QTE, there's several more companies that are looking to locate and build facilities in the Carson Douglas County area. The trick is going to be, how do they staff those, and where do those employees live? And we'll talk a little bit about the politics associated with that. But first of all, I want to thank Sierra Nevada Realtors for providing such great information all the time. But this gives you an idea of, this is just kind of a snapshot looking at Carson City, and this was year end. But that look at the median sold price up 16%, right? And yet the units sold, the new listings, all that just drastically down. And you guys are seeing it, as well as anybody. Folks who are in their house are trying to stay in their house, even if they could. Obviously they all have equity, they could sell, but where are they going to go? And how are they going to either step up into something or find something to replace it? So a lot of folks are just sitting still, and that's preventing us from getting all the inventory into the resale market that we really need to support that. And then from a permit standpoint, other than 2018 was a little bit of an anomaly with some big apartment projects like the one behind Casino Fandango and some other stuff out there. But as you can see, we're just kind of bouncing along with single family and multifamily. At this point, it really comes down to availability, and all these markets are the same. It's, we have access to lots to build on, and then do we have the labor to actually make that happen? So you guys have seen that. Let's see, on Douglas County, obviously, the darling, they've been, Douglas County has been seeing significant activity for years. Even they were one of the first markets to really come out of the economic downturn. And it was folks out of Southern California that were, looking for a better tax situation and relocating to beautiful Gardnerville. Unfortunately, a lot of those folks that have now moved there have decided that they don't want their friends to come. So we're really seeing a lot from the political side of things. We're seeing a lot of animosity towards new development, and trying to limit some of that growth because they're there now. We could just close that gate between us and anywhere else. One of the big conversations in Douglas County right now, as you guys might know, is we've got some new county commissioners in there, and they are not quite understanding the current dynamics as it relates to housing. They think that the place is just going to blow up. There's going to be way too many houses. It's going to be uncontrolled growth. It's going to destroy these communities. And I think it's interesting to look at the permits issued. Go back to, back in 2005, actually 500 permits issued, right? 400. The best we've been able to get back to in 2018 was 225. Last 2019 was only 148 because there were some projects that needed some, and they were wrapping up entitlements. They needed to go, get infrastructure on the ground, things of that nature. And last year, it was a modest 188. Douglas County has a growth control ordinance in place. So the most that we could ever build in any one year for single family is 270 homes. Douglas County went through this process years and years ago. They already have systems in place to prevent rampant growth and, overbuilding and things of that nature. So it's proceeding at a steady pace. There's no reason to be scared that things are just going to fall apart in Douglas County and blow up. But we also, I really need everybody's help in getting that message across to the community that, unfortunately, there's just so much bad information out there and misinformation. So we can still support growth and smart growth and valued growth, but we're going to continue based on the limitations that are currently in place. We're going to continue to see that median increase, and that's going to create problems for people working in Douglas County to be able to find housing. So, whether it's your teachers, your cops, your firefighters, and all the jobs that are being created out by the airport with these companies relocating out there, those folks are really going to struggle to find housing. And so we're already seeing significant traffic right on 95 where folks are buying out in Dayton and commuting into Douglas County. So don't expect that to change anytime soon. Lyon County, again, just all these communities, we're seeing just tremendous activity. Unfortunately, ran into a hiccup in the Dayton area with, they had some problems with their sewer capacity and in the sewer treatment plant in Dayton, and that prevented the Nevada Department of Environmental Protection from signing final maps. So we had projects that were approved that were trying to move forward, but they couldn't get final maps signed because of the capacity limitations. Good news is that literally within the last month, those issues, at least for now, have been addressed, and they're now back signing final maps. So we will be seeing lots coming online in the next 6 months, which will lead to new opportunities on the housing side. So I do expect to see permits bump up in probably Q3 of this year as they start taking advantage of those lots that are being freed up, because we got at least one of the many issues somewhat resolved. Washoe County, and just to tie it all in, obviously, right, we keep seeing, and this median's old, they're now up over 500,000. But it's the same in every market. We don't have enough resales. We can't build new inventory fast enough. And so that demand is driving prices just through the roof. So in talking about that's kind of where we're at, which you guys all know, but where are we going? There's a lot of talk at the national level that as we look forward, that there's a little bit of fear out there, right? We still have a lot of folks that were unemployed, because of whatever industry they were in, whether it was, gaming, hospitality, even, service sector, with restaurants and bars and things of that nature. So we still have a lot of those folks that are laid off. I've heard, some folks talk about, is this going to create a huge wave of foreclosures? In talking with all the lenders that I know, they're actually not worried about that at all, because of what's happening with the inflationary pressure on housing, and the fact that we're seeing the prices just continue to rise so exponentially. All the lenders understand that even if if you're struggling to make your house payment, and there's the potential that you could be foreclosed on once they remove, these barriers that are out there that prevent the banks from doing that, all these houses are going to have equity in them. So you're not going to have a situation like 07, 08, where all of a sudden the values bottom out and now all these houses are underwater. Every one of these houses that may not, that might be theoretically in trouble because the folks aren't making their house payment, they all have equity. And so the lenders are less worried about that, which is helpful. But it still creates a situation where you've heard a lot of folks talk about, originally we were thinking, well, maybe this is going to be a V-shaped recovery. Maybe it's going to be a W and L. One of the things they're really starting to talk about now is this idea of a K-shaped recovery, where you have the folks that were working in the industries that were less impacted by COVID, they continue to work, right? And those are the ones that are out there buying up properties and spending their money and doing their things. But there's also folks who have been out there who have been unemployed, and there's the potential for them to struggle longer term. And so, we're going to have theoretically, and you guys tell me, I think it's probably not a horrible thing if we did get some of this inventory to actually come into the market and satisfy some of the need that's out there. But it's gonna make it a little tricky, looking longer term. But again, as it relates to Northern Nevada, this is certainly, I could see this having an effect in Vegas. But in Northern Nevada, I really don't see this becoming an issue because of everything. The one thing, and let's kind of talk about, what we're looking at and keeping an eye on going forward is, the idea of these workplace changes, right? So when they shut down, when a lot of these tech companies shut down for COVID, they said, you know what, you guys can work from home. Hell, this is so awesome. Why don't we just adopt this long term? There's already talk within several circles that you're finding out that folks aren't as productive when they're working from home as when they're in the office. And so some companies are starting to think about, pulling back that policy. That could have a huge impact on us, right? Because I'm sure all of you have run into buyers who, are here because they had the opportunity to now work remotely. And of course, and it's interesting because that's also driving, the needs of those buyers. We're seeing a lot of our builders are already making adjustments to their product type to allow for, okay, you don't need that fourth bedroom, but you need an office. So, let's figure that out. And so it's pretty interesting to see how literally in 1 year, how it's starting to drive some of the consumer needs on the housing side of it. They need a safe space, right? So they need a yard, even if it's small. They need a yard. They need a place to exercise. They need an office. I think this is going to be burned in our memories for a bit, and I think you're going to have folks that want to make sure that they're kind of insulated and protected if this thing flares back up again. So we're really keeping an eye on the workplace changes. I will tell you, literally, in the last 6 months, I've gone from talking with builders and developers about taking old office space and converting it into residential because they figured that office space was going to be a thing of the past, to now going, wait a minute, hold off on that, because employers are now saying that they probably do need to bring some of these folks back in, and so we actually will need that office space. So it doesn't help us from a housing side. But the other thing is local governments, and this is something that we obviously have a lot of direct interaction with all of our local governments, typically through our planning departments and our building departments. And we in Nevada, we struggle with our property tax system and the property tax's ability to fund our local governments. And so all of them are seeing just this tremendous increase in folks coming in, all this pressure on housing. We need, so we need more of it. There's more folks coming into the area, and yet their budgets are still pretty stalled out, and they're not seeing a real big uptick in revenue. So to try and meet some of the needs of from the service side of all these folks that are coming in, and as a function of that, they tend to get a little hostile towards growth, and which is really frustrating, because as we try to explain to them in our current situation with our property tax system, new development, new construction is the only one that actually pays the full, the full boat. So there's no depreciation, there's no considerations. It's whatever that thing's worth at the time that the property closes, they get to pay that big property tax bill. So literally every one of the jurisdictions that in Nevada is having these conversations about how do we manage this growth, how do we meet the needs of the community, how do we balance the folks that are here versus the folks that are coming here, and it's going to the point that like we said, where you have 3 county commissioners down in Douglas County, who, by the way, between the 3 of them, I think they have a total combined like 10 or 11 years actually living in Douglas County, right? They're all transplants. And so now they're saying, wait, hold off. We don't need any more, we don't need any more housing. So you guys have a tremendous voice. You guys have tremendous reach. I would kind of implore you to, make that voice be heard and let folks know that, our communities, they're not blowing up. They physically can't blow up because of all the limitations that we have in place, whether it's land and workforce and even materials, right? If any of you have tried to buy an appliance lately, it gives you a pretty good idea of what's going on at our scale. I projects, I can think of a townhouse project in Douglas County that literally was held up for 6 months because they couldn't get windows. So we're going to continue to see challenges like that. And so it's going to be another crazy year of demand exceeding supply, prices going up, and we're really kind of constrained with how much we can put in the market. And then, of course, state legislature, thank God we only allow them to get together every other year. So they can't do too much damage, but it's amazing how much they can scare us in 4 months. And so there's been some pretty ugly proposals out there as it relates to housing and trying to make it even more difficult. So I will tell you that we had last Friday was a big deadline. It was for first committee passage. And last week really sucked. It was a lot of long nights, but some of the worst legislation out there for now seems to be dead. One of the big ones was they were going to require Southwest Gas to prepare a plan to basically phase out natural gas in the state over the next 20 to 30 years. And I would imagine you guys are kind of just as in awe as I am that the idea that we would try and take something like that away from us, one of our most efficient and both cost efficient and energy efficient, utilities to take that out of the mix would just be devastating on so many levels. And so we're glad to hear that they've moved on to bigger fish. And just if anybody questions you about this, so we're not anti-climate, we're not climate change deniers. We're not, being completely self-serving on this issue. When you look at the numbers as it relates to greenhouse gas production within our state right now, for residential and commercial use, all natural gas consumption for residential, natural, and commercial use only contributes 4% to our total greenhouse emissions. And it's held steady at 4% for the last 15 years. So I think that's a pretty good tribute to efficiency within our appliances and what they're doing within that system. So you could eliminate all natural gas in houses and it wouldn't really make a dent in the problem. So, but don't worry, there's still plenty of other bad ideas out there at the state legislature. So we'll keep an eye on that, and really thankful for the collaboration that I have with the lobbyists on behalf of the realtors. So